The latest headline is this Twitter or X astrology influencer that pushed her kid from a moving car and killed her partner. So her name was Mystic Lipstick on Twitter, but her real name is Danielle Johnson, and she killed her husband and pushed her two children, a 9-year-old and an 8-year-old, from her car on the 405 freeway. And my condolences to both the child and her partner. And though I was not aware of this influencer and I didn't see her work, I did see a lot of the post about the eclipse, and my personal thought on it, a lot of it was a lot of fear mongering. I didn't get around to making any type of post about it. I mean, other than, my own astrology post in regards to how to use the eclipse for yourself, or, I do new moon, full moon post. So that was mainly what my post was about, but not how, the eclipse will affect you at large. But today I wanted to go over, a mythic story. And I'm reading the story from The Mythic Journey, Use Myth, Fairy Tales, and Folklore to Explain Life Mysteries. And this is by Liz Green. It's one of my favorite astrology writers, or writers in general, to be honest. And she writes about, in chapter 2, spiritual quests. And I'm going to read the one about the fortunes of Dr. Faustus. So this character Faust have been written, or the subject of several dramas by Marlowe Goethe. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And there's an opera by Gounod and a novel by Thomas Mann. So it's a pretty popular story, or a pretty popular character in story. So in The Fortunes of Dr. Faust, Liz Green goes on to say, good is incomprehensible without evil. The mysterious battle between good and evil within the human soul is portrayed in myth nowhere better than in the story of Dr. Faustus. Marlowe's great tragedy, Dr. Faustus, and Goethe's sublime epic poem, Faust, were both drawn from this medieval tale about a man whose spiritual quest ultimately led him to sell his soul to the devil. His eventual recognition of the aridity of earthly pleasures and his final redemptions through remorse and compassion remains a powerful image of the need to comprehend both the dark and the light in order to find inner peace. So she writes, there once was a brilliant philosopher and student of theology called Dr. Faustus. But the teachings which the philosophers and theologians offered about the nature of God and the meaning of life could not satisfy his inquiring intellect. Moreover, his pride was as great as his knowledge, and he desired to discover the answers to life's greatest mysteries by his own efforts rather than receiving them from those whom he secretly despised, for thus he could claim all the credit. So, in time, Dr. Faustus abandoned his theology and became a student of Hermetic magic, for he hoped to find the secret of life in alchemical experiments and the forbidden knowledge of magic and sorcery passed down from the ancient Egyptians. Yet, even these forbidden researches could not teach him all he wished to know, and he sank into a deep melancholy, calling on the infernal spirits in his despair. In response to his summons, a black dog mysteriously appeared in the scholar's study, which then metamorphosed into a strange figure who announced himself as Mephistopheles, spirit of evil and negation. Mephistopheles was forever on the lookout for human souls whom he could win over to the darkness. thus cheating God, and Faustus wanted Mephistopheles' knowledge of life's secrets and the nature of the divine. Thus a pact was made between them, signed in blood, and Mephistopheles agreed to serve Faustus in this world, while Faustus agreed to serve Mephistopheles in the next. Mephistopheles knew full well what price Faustus would pay, but the philosopher had not yet understood that it was his immortal soul which he was signing away onto eternity. For a time, Faustus was excited by the magic and mysteries which Mephistopheles, I'm going to butcher that name, showed him, and believed that at last he was getting close to knowing the secrets of God. But the dark spirit of negation gradually eroded the scholar's will and lured him into a deeper and deeper sensuality and pride, and all sense of spiritual quest was lost. Faustus desired a young girl called Gretchen, whom Mephistopheles contrived to lure into the scholar's hands. She became pregnant by Faustus, and when he abandoned her, she went mad and killed her infant in despair, and was then executed for her crime. Realizing the terrible destruction he had wrought on an innocent human life, Faustus suffered a deep and bitter remorse. For although he was in the hands of Mephistopheles, he had begun to truly love the girl, and thus something in his soul was kept free of corruption. And this Mephistopheles had not anticipated, since the redemptive power of love was not something the spirit of negation had any knowledge of. But such was the power of Mephistopheles held over Faustus, that for many years the philosopher indulged every sensual pleasure and penetrated every secret mystery. All that he had wanted to know, he learned, and understood the glorious heights of heaven and the shrouded bowels of the underworld. However, the remorse he felt about the death of Gretchen grew like a canker inside him, and in spite of his corruption, something within him continued to long for the light. As the scholar grew older, Mephistopheles waited with patience and satisfaction, for the time will soon arrive when the scholar would face death, and then his soul would belong to the darkness. But at the final moment, when Faustus at last confronted the true consequences of the pact which he had made, so filled with remorse and love and suffering was he that his soul slipped from Mephistopheles' grip and was borne aloft to the heavenly spheres. So, Liz Green, of course, gives her commentary on what the story means. And this is the commentary. The story of Dr. Faustus is a mythic metaphor for every human being's struggle to find the light in the midst of darkness. Faustus is a paradigm of the inner world of all of us, full of conflict between our egocentric desires and our longing to serve something higher and greater than ourselves. Although the original myth has its roots in medieval Christianity and therefore presents good and evil in a somewhat simplistic manner or simplistic way, nevertheless the message transcends any specific religious doctrine, particularly if it is understood psychologically. Faustus is a symbol of questing spirit within each human being, courageous and individualistic enough to reject the dogma offered by conventional religious authorities, yet dangerously arrogant in assuming that it can defy fundamental human morality in the name of knowledge. We may condemn Faustus for his greed and arrogance, yet we must admire him for his courage and willingness to risk his soul in order to penetrate to the heart of life's mysteries. Here we are presented with the profound paradox of good and evil, for in order to truly understand the former, we must also recognize the latter, and in order to make the recognition, We must meet it first in the secret darkness of our own hearts. Faustus' disillusionment with conventional philosophical and theological offerings reflect the dilemma of a fine intellect which cannot simply believe because one is told to do so. The spiritual quest, if it is truly heartfelt, arises not from a childlike acceptance of belief, but from disillusionment and a profound desire to understand life's paradox. Many people never move beyond childlike belief, for it is more comforting to be given simple answers to moral and spiritual dilemmas, and while such people may risk no danger inwardly, they can never really know what life is about, nor find any peace when confronted with the unanswerable question invoked by unfair suffering. Many of the world's greatest religions condemn such questioning, as did the medieval church of Faustus' time. Questioning involves danger, but it also opens up the potential for a real experience of soul and inner world. Power corrupts, a fact no less true on the spiritual plane than on the material one. False new power pushes him over the moral edge, and he is impervious to the destruction he inflicts on Gretchen. Yet he does love her and cannot entirely ignore what he has done. And this little seed of remorse, born from compassion, is ultimately what allows him to cheat the devil and find forgiveness and redemption. Thus, it is not good works which save him, but the fact that, despite being steeped in pride and sensuality, he can still love and feel remorse. We are taught that we must be good in terms of our actions if we are to be acceptable in the eyes of God. Yet the story of Faustus teaches us that goodness is relative to the definition of morality espoused by any society at any epoch of history. Love and remorse, however, are not confined to the doctrine of any specific culture or religion. They allow us to taste of both light and darkness and somehow retain the integrity of the soul. It is possible that any honest spiritual quest will lead us into our own potential for darkness and destruction, and that only through facing these things and perhaps even feeling for a time that we are irredeemable, our own pact with the devil, can experience what might be called grace. Grace, although the term is Christian, is something not limited to Christianity. It is a mysterious inner release which arises from within and which makes sense not only of our goodness but of our evil as well. Thus, the myth of Dr. Faustus is not the simple morality tale it might first appear. It is an inner journey, as with all myths, when viewed on a psychological level, all characters are within each of us. Faustus and Mephistopheles are two sides of the same coin and reflect two dimensions of the human being: the spirit of negation, which we may all experience when we view life as worthless and others as insignificant, may be found in every one of us. We may invoke Mephistopheles within every time we become disillusioned with life. But Mephistopheles is not merely the devil. In Gothe's great drama, Mephistopheles says to Faust, "I am the spirit which wills forever evil, yet does forever good." It is through the agency of our inner darkness that we may eventually find our way to the light. So I read all of that because I thought it really sums up, kind of like the story and a lot of the stories that, we go through. And I know like we all think about, good and evil. But, of course, from my understanding, there's not really any evil. And I think, she sums it up well when she says at the end in Gothe's great drama, Mephistopheles says to Faust, "I am the spirit which wills forever evil, yet does forever good." And I think that it's a great commentary. And I think a lot of people do need to, because you hear a lot of people talk about evil and the devil. Sometimes, we could get caught up in that. But, a lot of us need to kind of get to a philosophical level where we think about things, on a deeper level rather than just, as the story kind of said, looking at things from a childlike perspective of where we receive the answers versus, questioning what it is that we're being told, which is, I'm supposing it's kind of the journey that this young lady was on. And, somehow, that got kind of messy with the ending of, her killing her partner and, one of her children, which is, I want to say sad, but, it's something that we could all learn from. And whether it be the solar eclipse or the story or any other story or any other thing that you see on TikTok or Facebook, for me personally, is always to try to learn from things. And I hope that, if you're listening to this, that you try to, learn from the things around you versus, judging them. On any notes, make sure you like and follow, share this post for more. Ciao.